Tim Nichols is here with us from Franklin Templeton. He's vice president over there, and we work pretty closely with them. So it's nice to have him here and kind of a treat. So we'll get some good information and kind of go from there. But Sarah, you can go for it. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say I'm Sarah Sturm. I'm with the marketing part of Park City Credit Union, and we have been hosting Northwoods Financial Summit series, monthly webinars for our community members that we serve. And so we're just thankful that we have Tim with us to be our December Northwoods Financial Summit. We also have another one coming up later this month on Monday, December 20th at 2 p.m. Our board member, Steve Metz, he's a CPA, and so he'll be talking about tax prep and those types of things. So if anyone is interested in joining that webinar later this month, we can get you some information on that as well. It's on our website, but just wanted to say thank you for joining us. And if you're virtual attending right now and you have questions at all, you can chat them in or feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you and have you participate that way. But otherwise, I'll let you take it.
And you're in charge of that part for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Lisa and I will do that.
I have some, limited amount of capabilities here.
Yep,
That's
nope, we're good.
That's for sure. Thank you all very much for coming and really appreciate you taking the time out. We have somebody at the door. Somebody wanting to come in? Go over here.
Yeah. I don't know if
Sorry.
I will. Right.
Sorry about that,
We don't
folks.
set the alarm up and have the cops come and raid us.
Let's start this over here real quick. Thanks again for coming out. And I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier about how, this time of year, things get so dark so quickly. I already feel like it's about 7 o'clock, right? It just feels pretty late out there. But we're here today to talk about, the future is now and investing for a brighter tomorrow. We're going to take a look at all of the different areas of innovation and how that's affecting our lives and what is really changing for us out there. We've had a lot going on. Things have really been speeding up with the pandemic, right? In terms of the way things are changing. You think about people, where they're working now, they're changing jobs and they're maybe working remotely. I was talking with an advisor today up in Eagle River, and a lot of people have been moving in from out of town. They're working remotely now, doing it via Zoom and whatnot. So a lot of things happening. So take a look at some of the innovation that we've had that's happened through the pandemic, right? The food delivery business is really taking off. You've got the Zoom meetings that are happening. Many people are not even needing to go into their doctors now to get the kind of medical help that they would have normally needed to go into, right? They're doing video chats for that and getting that done as well. So a lot of different things changing for us from an innovation standpoint. And if you look at it even here, getting back to work safely, right? And I can take it a step further, not just getting back to work, getting to the gym safely, right? I'm over in the Twin Cities, and when I went to the Lifetime Fitness for the first time in over a year, May 1st of this year, the first thing that was greeting me when I walked in was a little scanner deal behind the glass that I had to go and stand this close and then so it could take my temperature, right? And then they had to do a couple of other things. And then I was able to get in the gym and I was wearing a mask. Interestingly enough, that went away about 3 weeks later. Everything disappeared and it was all a free for all. The bottom line is that you can do that and make things safer and healthier for people. Think about this, the grocery store, right? All the different, when your groceries are rolling along there, that's all being cleaned as it goes through, right? Escalator rails, all being cleaned as you go through. So a lot of different things happening out there, really ramping things up from a health standpoint. Are we okay?
It's just not progressing on the screen, but it is on here, so I don't know what.
Do whatever you need to do.
Okay.
I'm okay. I'm okay. Do you mind if I keep going though?
Yeah.
While we're doing it? Okay.
I think we're fine.
So we're going to talk today about the rapid pace of progress and what's going on there. We're going to talk about some of the new creation of things in the market that are creating abundant opportunities for people. We're going to talk about our daily lives and how they're changing. And then we're also going to talk about investing in the future and how we're doing that today. So if you think about how countries are spending their money and how companies are spending their money right now, this chart right here, what this is going to walk us through, the gray circle is representing how much in the year 2000 these countries were spending on research and development. The blue circle out there is how much they were spending in that area in 2019. So you can see a huge increase here in the US, a really large increase in Europe, and look at China, right? China back in 2000 was only spending about $33 billion in terms of R&D, research and development. Now they're spending $526 billion, right? So a lot of development going on, a lot of money being spent to really get us going and developing some of these new products. And we're going to talk about some of those as we move through here and what's going on out there. Take a look at this, patent grants. Okay, the number of people applying for patents, right, for inventions that they're creating have been on a huge uptick over the last 10 years. People creating new ways and new ideas of doing things and applying for those patents. And you can see a huge upward trend here as we've gone through, especially the pandemic. And the important thing here too to note is that you look at years like 08, 09, right? Global financial crisis, during recession, it doesn't slow down. You look back 2000, 2001, get a little bit of a slowdown at the start of the tech wreck, bounce right back up, right? So people are really constantly developing and creating new ideas out there. We're going to take a look at the downturns here and how they haven't slowed innovation. These are some of the innovations that are out there just since 1991. Now, I'm a little bit older than that, right? A lot older than that. Some of the innovations I remember that I thought were really cool back in the day. In the 1980s, I had a Sony Walkman. Anybody here know what a Sony Walkman was? Yes, yeah, right? Okay. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, right? Headphones attached, yellow thing on my hip and everything running around. I also, by the way, as a side note, I had a big boom box that I carried on my shoulder when I ride my bike down the street. So that's a whole other story. You can see there's all kinds of innovations that happen through all kinds of recessions, right? Global financial crisis, we had Airbnb come up, right? We had iPads invented about 10 years ago. Think about how far that's developed just in the 10 years, right? When the iPad came out. You look at here, we got 4G, smartwatches, we got all kinds of things, ride sharing. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. All of these things that happened. So the 90s were really about Wi-Fi and getting things developed in the 90s and kind of going through that process. 2000s, right? We hit the 2000s. We got a lot of social media. We could argue how much good that is. We did get a lot of social media happening in the 2000s. And here we are in the 2010s, really moving forward to iCloud and all of those other things that are happening just in the last 10 years. Innovation is constantly going, constantly growing, and constantly picking up. You can see, as I mentioned before, it doesn't matter what the markets are doing. Recessions, bull markets, doesn't matter. All these things just keep on coming at us and keep developing. Let's take a look at this. We're going to take a look at the smartphone. Consumers downloaded a record 218 billion apps in 2020. Billion apps. That's how many people were downloading the apps just last year. Ride sharing. I bet you we're going to talk about that. In 2012, the taxi industry was valued at $2.4 billion. Here we are 9 years later, that was 2019 now. The ride-sharing industry valued at $85 billion. Think about how that has changed how we are using public transportation. My daughters are both out in Washington, D.C. I don't think they've ever used a taxi, not once. But I see Uber bills come across the credit card quite frequently, right? I see Lyft bills come across the credit card constantly. It's totally shifted the way things are doing it, right? And really driving the taxi industry almost completely out. Okay, Uber and Lyft are really taking over the rideshare community. It's just an enormous part of, especially how the younger folks are moving and getting around. Take a look at food delivery. At the end of August 2021, 50% of U.S. consumers have ordered from meal delivery services, right? Uber Eats, DoorDash, and there's many other ones out there, right? People are able to order food from any variety of restaurants, have them delivered right to their home. Great thing during the pandemic, right? Saved a bunch of these restaurants, the places that were really struggling, right? They couldn't have people come in. They're able to get their food and delivered out in ways where they're not hiring delivery drivers. They're not working like that. They're basically able to go out and get people to come in and come pick up the food and deliver it out to you. Everybody in the room had that ordered online? Yeah. Just pretty much had food delivered, right? Great convenient way to do it. Entertainment. This is fascinating. So again, I'm going to age myself a little bit, right? I remember little handheld, like, Nintendo games and Atari games, and I'm not, what was it, Pong or something was one of the really, like, first video games out there. I remember playing that, but I was a little bit past that one. More Tecmo Bowl, I think, is kind of more my speed. But mobile gaming revenue is higher than console and PC gaming combined. Right? The number of podcast listeners on smartphones has quadrupled since 2014. Just again, rapid development in these areas of bringing entertainment and bringing the gaming directly to you instead of me having to go over to my buddy's house and mooch off of his Atari system, right? And play games. So take a look at these companies. All of these great companies that are still around here, right? IBM, Disney, HP, all the way through everything. What do these all have in common? They're all founded during recessions, right? All of these companies on this board were founded during recessions and everything. So recessions sometimes are going to bring out some of the best in people in terms of creating ideas and opportunities in terms of developing these companies. So are we better off today? Okay. You can see we've got a lot of different ways we can measure this, right? Health, wealth, more educated global population. Let's take a look at some of these statistics. 140 million people per year enter the middle class. Okay, that's and when you think about it. So part of the definition, I've been asked this before. Part of the definition on the middle class, right, is the ability to go out and be able to afford things that are beyond just your necessities, right? The things that you need to live. And so each country has different measurements, right? Because they have different levels of wealth and different levels of income. But it's an incredible statistic. In the country of China, they anticipate that there will be 300 million new middle class citizens in China over the next 10 years. And so it's on the rise. And folks, when they get into the middle class, right, that's when they start spending money on all the things we've already talked about, right? Smartphones and whatnot. And so this is a really important statistic that we're getting people moving up in the middle class. In 2018, half the world is now middle class or wealthier, right? Took a long time to get there. Consumer spending is expected to increase by 203% by 2030. Okay, another important statistic, because you may not realize this, in the US, GDP growth, right? When you see GDP numbers out there, GDP numbers are driven, 70% of GDP growth is driven by the consumer, right? Consumer spending, really good for the health of our overall economy. Higher education enrollment is expected to grow by 200% through 2040. Global life expectancy keeps climbing 77 years by 2048. That's a global number, right? The US were already at that level, but this is a global number to get to 77 years. I'm going to give you a possibly scary statistic, depending on what you think of this. But scientists believe that the first person to live to the age of 150 years old has already been born. Okay, think about it, 150 years old. That's a lot of retirement years, right? I hope. Right? So but people are living longer and everything, and that's why so many of the decisions you make, on a side note here, from an investment standpoint, from a social security standpoint, pensions, all those things, that's why making those decisions are really, really important, right? We're living longer. You have to be ready and prepared for that. So I hear from people all the time about, oh my gosh, robots are taking over all these jobs, all these different things are, all these different innovations are really going to create, they're going to take away all these opportunities for people. But what happens is things change out there, right? Back in 1800, you had 4 out of 5 Americans worked on a farm, right? I don't know what that exact stat is today, but I certainly know it's significantly lower than that, right? Probably lower than 1 out of every 5 live and work on a farm, right? So that's definitely changed. In 1910, you had 1 out of 20 of the American workforce was working on the railways. And then in the 1940s, 350,000 manual telephone operators worked for AT&T alone. Right? Now, things have changed and they've progressed in many ways and moved away from some of these things. It doesn't mean there aren't other opportunities out there. Today, 6 out of 10 fastest growing occupations are related to the healthcare field. Right? An enormous opportunity in healthcare, and it makes a lot of sense, right? We're living longer. You've got a lot of baby boomers out there that are aging into areas where they're going to need more of that healthcare. So you've got a lot of great opportunities in this area, in the healthcare industry right now, and that's where a lot of people are moving to. Okay. By the way, if there aren't any questions or anything, feel free to stop me and raise your hand. If you want to grab something else to drink, please don't hesitate. I'll get in a good flow regardless here. So the way we shop, and I'm going to admit something right now. See that then part? That's still my now. So I still go take a trip to the store, wait in line, bag my own items and everything. I do all that. I actually don't trust other people to pick out my produce for me. That's just my personal deal. So I actually go to the store myself and take care of that. But now people are clicking and collecting curbside pickup, right? They just go online, they order it all, they drive to the store, they pick it up and they sit there and wait in their car and it gets put in and they go home. What's next, of course, is drone delivery, right? You're going to order your groceries. They're going to actually drop them on your doorstep. You don't even have to get out and get in your car and go pick them up. Anybody had a drone delivery yet at all? I haven't either. I know it's coming. I know it's coming. We're going to have drones flying all over the sky, dropping stuff off and everything. But that's what we think is going to happen next, and then what it looks like is going to happen from a shopping standpoint. The demand for e-commerce has grown substantially. You can see the percentage of total retail sales made online in 2020. Now, the interesting thing about this is that there is still a great deal of room to grow in many of these areas, right? If total retail sales, only 13% are made online, does that not seem a little low to everybody? I mean, based on the number of Amazon boxes that come to my house, I got to believe that seems a little low, but only 13% are coming that way. 69% media, right? If you're like if you're like my household at all, we have Netflix, Hulu, Disney, or Disney Plus, whatever they call it. We've got all these different ways to get our media. You get toys, clothing, all kinds of things that are coming online. So that area is going to continue to grow and continue to develop, and we're going to be using more and more of this as we move forward. It's more, though, than just Amazon and Alibaba, right? Those are companies that you hear about a lot. You hear a lot about what they're doing and how much they're making and how rich they're making, all the people that co-founded them and found them and all that. But there are other things that are happening along that line that are opportunities all the way through for many other companies and many other people, right? You got the payment providers in there, packaging and fulfillment opportunities, transportations, actual delivery. So there's a lot of things that are happening, a lot of companies that are benefiting from the growth in this area. And so when we talk about jobs that might be lost, right? You got to think about the number of people that are out there driving Amazon trucks now, right? And delivering that. So you've got all these other things are creating different jobs. It's just kind of moving along with what's happening out there, whether it's, like I said, the healthcare industry, whether it be at Amazon or whatnot, there are plenty of opportunities out there. So the way we pay, I still have cash, by the way. But you talk to my daughters, they do not have cash. I don't think my daughters ever have cash on them, at least not when I'm around. But then you had cash on hand, or you wrote checks, right, out of your checkbook. Now it's debit cards and credit cards. And interestingly enough, people still use credit cards a lot. That's a 1950s type of invention, right? I mean, so we think it's going to move into different directions, including next biometric scanning. Whether that's just a thumbprint or whatever it might be, it'll be changing how you actually purchase things. You won't carry the credit cards either. One other thing that we're looking at that's changing, I mentioned just the biometric side of things. It's just kind of a time chart of what's going on. And as I mentioned, credit cards were more of a 1950s kind of thing. Online payments, chip, mobile payments, digital wallet. Those are the things and how we're moving along in terms of how we actually physically pay for things that have changed significantly. Another thing, rise of mobile payments. 3 times, that's how much we've grown worldwide mobile payment transactions since 2016. Apple Pay has tripled the number of users just over the last 1 year. I personally don't have Apple Pay at this particular time, but I know my daughters both do, everything, and that's growing tremendously, right? So there's going to be all kinds of new ways that you're paying for things from your mobile device and whatnot. The way that we treat illnesses, Before, it required a trip to the doctor's office, right? That was a mandatory thing. Your records were kept there in a folder. Now we're doing a lot more telemedicine, right? We're connecting with our doctors virtually. We're getting a hold of them and they're giving us the information that we need, giving us prescriptions, giving us all the kind of things that we need to treat the things that the illnesses that we might have without actually going into the office. We wear devices, right? Depending on what you have. I mean, I've got a Fitbit on right here to measure my heartbeat, can measure all kinds of different things if I allow it to. But the bottom line is that there are all kinds of wearable devices that can get this information to your doctors, and they can have this and track this information. I don't even know that this is next robotic surgery, right? This is already happening. I was talking to an advisor the other day. He knows a surgeon that comes in to the surgeon's job is to go in and fix other surgeons' mistakes, right? And he does this with a robotic computer, doesn't lay a single hand on the patient, everything, but he has this down and everything. He's also making multiple millions of dollars a year doing this because he's in there fixing these mistakes and everything. But that's all he does. He does a computer with the image right there, and he has a robot that's going in and fixing the mistakes on these surgeries. So this stuff is already happening, right? This is absolutely happening on the robotic side. Innovations in healthcare. I'm going to use my mother-in-law as an example. She's not here, and I don't think she'll mind. My mother-in-law's had 2 hips and now a knee replaced. Okay. Her first hip was 20 years ago. And she needed at that time, because of the surgery and the recovery time and everything, we actually had a hospital bed put into our dining room, and she stayed with us for a couple of weeks. Now, I love my mother-in-law, so that was not a problem. I imagine for some people that might not be the best situation, but it worked out great for us. 15 years later, she had her other hip replaced. I mean, and she was totally fine, right? She went through the PT, she got out of the hospital, everything went well, did not need to be in the bed at all. When she just got her knee replaced about 3 months ago, they actually, through the MRI, they custom built her knee to the exact dimensions of what she needed in her leg, right? They had all that laser technology done and built this knee specifically for her. She walked out of that surgery that day and over to her room, walked back out of the hospital. They just kept her one night for observation and walked right back out. Right? All kinds of incredible things happening here. I'm starting to call her the $6 million woman kind of deal, if you get that reference. Again, old school kind of thing. But there's all kinds of great things that are happening and advancements happening in healthcare, whether it be in artificial intelligence, robotics, any of those areas that are really helping make people's lives better and more fulfilling by helping them, overcome some of these obstacles. Genomics, right? If you go back 20 years, right, the blue line here is representing the cost. The green line is the sequencing of the genes, right? And if you go back 20 years ago, you can see $2.7 billion to sequence a gene, right? Now, back at that time, if you think about it from an innovation standpoint, you think about it from an investing standpoint, you're not going to be able to invest in something that's like that, right? If it costs $2.7 billion to sit there and do the gene sequencing, there's not a way to make money off of that. Now, at $1,000, 20 years later, now you can do that, right? And you have Ancestry.com, you have different ways that you can do this throughout the healthcare area to help people. Sequencing genes is an incredibly important part of the healthcare and what's happening to, cure cancer and other diseases. And it's incredibly cheap to do when you think about it, right? From 2.7 billion 20 years ago to $1,000 today. Absolutely incredible. You've got U.S. cancer death rates falling, dropped by largest amount on record. You've got all of this from the genetic information that we're getting with doctors, being able to customize the type of medication and the type of services that you're receiving, okay, in order to battle cancer and to defeat cancer. So this is really a big time advancement as well. So we talked a lot about, kind of the rapid pace of progress, what's going on. these things are just going faster and faster, right? We're in the middle of what our management team thinks of the fourth industrial revolution, right? The advancements that we're making in robotics, genomics, blockchain, fintech type areas, artificial intelligence, all of that stuff. We think that we are in the middle of this big giant revolution, and everything is going to just keep going faster and faster from an innovation standpoint. A big part of what we think is going to drive not just all these things that we're talking about, drive the markets, drive our economy. All of these things are going to be really beneficial for us. So, with that being said, that is the end of my presentation. I think I'm about right on time. I'm happy to take questions on anything that you might have, whether it be related to this, related to the markets, anything that you might want to ask. I'm happy to answer a question or two. Please.
So based on what you're saying here, you seem very bullish on the future.
Yes. Markets or innovation or both, or
Well, markets particularly.
markets. Yeah, we actually feel that there's a lot to be bullish about, at least near term. We do think we're certainly in for a bumpy road, and we're seeing that over the last week or so in terms of COVID. We think we're for a little bit of a bumpy road here.
Today was a big day again.
Today was a big day, right? Yeah, following a bad day, following a good day, So we think we're going to be in this kind of volatile space right now until we get our hands wrapped around this a little bit. But overall, we look at the economy. When you have a Federal Reserve that is accommodating us the way that they are, right, in terms of inexpensive money, right? You see, rates are incredibly low. They're supporting the bond markets to a huge extent. They're starting to taper that. There's still a lot of money, a lot of support from the Fed, and that's really, in our opinion, going to continue to juice the market. And there's also a lot of pent up cash. If you look at the consumer personal wealth kind of situation, you've got about $16 trillion in cash on the sidelines. If you look at corporations, they've got a huge amount of cash as well. So, and it seems like there's a lot of pent up demand for a lot of things, right? And and some of the bounce back areas we can see, of course, once we start feeling more comfortable. You look at travel, you look at restaurants, you look at things in the hospitality area. Those are things that are going to recover in a big way.
Because I'm that guy that's going to make it to 150. So I'm just wondering how I should invest.
If you're that guy, then you gotta have a lot of money going into growth and keep plugging along. You gotta support it.
Pretty conservative now, but
Yeah.
based on what you're saying, boy,
No, we feel pretty good about things. Now, I will say, not crystal ball future looking at everything, but they have talked a little bit about what are things in the future that could, trip things up, right? And one of the things is we've got a huge national deficit that we're funding okay right now because we've got incredibly low rates. If you start getting higher rates to fund that deficit and everything, it becomes a little more problematic. And so that's something that, we don't think it's an issue today, but I think we think it could be a problem a little further down the road. I feel like that's a can you can kick down the road though right now, right?
What are your thoughts on the current state of inflation?
I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts on the current state of
Interest rates and inflation both? I'll take them separately. I'll take them separately. Let me start with the inflation. Interesting statistic on inflation that doesn't get talked much about in the media and everything, but if you look at core CPI numbers, used cars are actually creating they're responsible, even though they only represent 4.4% of the CPI, they're actually responsible for 35% of the increase in inflation right now. And that is an area that we think can get straightened out. I'll give you my own personal example. I traded in a car that I originally looked at trading in back in February. And at the time, Kelly Blue Book told me it was worth $20,000. And 6 months later, and how many ever thousands of miles I drove it, and it was worth miraculously $25,500. Right. And that's for, unless you own, some kind of, special collector car or something, that's just not real, right? That's not the way things are supposed to happen. And used cars are a huge impact on inflation. So one of the things we're looking at, and one of the things we are starting to see, used car prices are starting to come down. There are going to be more new cars being built right now. And as soon as we get more chips and you kind of elevate the production there, we think that's going to be a positive thing, in terms of bringing inflation back down. So that's one thing on inflation. On interest rates, we think our belief overall is we think they're too low, right? We think the government should, the Fed should have moved on that a little while ago. You look at house prices, for example, right? They're just gone through the roof, right? You've got a whole, I don't know if we're creating a housing bubble or not. We haven't really talked too much about that, but you're pricing out a lot of people that can't get into homes right now and into starter homes, even because things are just priced out to way too far, way too high. So we think rates should probably be a little bit higher than where they are. We don't think they're going to move that quickly, though. I mean, we just don't. I mean, we don't think the Fed's going to move that quickly on it.
Sure.
But when you think about it, directionally speaking, up is almost about the only way you can go from here, right? It's just a question of when and how fast and how much.
So you think inflation will be pretty much transitory, and you think it'll recover for the most part?
Yeah, I think one person's transitory is another person's longer term, in terms of inflation. The hard part with inflation right now, as far as we can see, it's supply chain related, right? You've got, I think the number I saw is that we're short, as a country, we're short about 80,000 truck drivers, right? I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you've got a lot of things that need to get straightened out from that standpoint that we think are going to help from an inflation standpoint. And quite honestly, the government's put so much money out there, right? I mean, it's just it's an incredible amount of money that we probably didn't need quite that much. I know my new $2 at age 23, 21 did not need the stimulus checks that they got, but they did get them. But that's kind of the world we live in. Any other questions? No?
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll come around in a sec and say hi to everyone again. But for those online as well, if you have any questions or want to get a hold of us, you can reach us at the credit union, 715-536-8351. My goodness, yeah. So 715-536-8351. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I will be hanging out for a little bit. For anybody who wants to come up and ask me a question, whatever, I will be hanging out for a bit. So
Yep. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.